book then in that case then. So this is the book, 3-book set. It's been the most popular of the 3 versions of it. So just as a quick summary, there is the standard single book edition, which is the main book. Then there is a 2-book collector's edition, and this is the 3-book RS edition, which is about, it's been, I don't know, about 75% of sales. But the most important thing is this is one I know that people are very interested in, but the whole idea is just to give you a good idea of all the other goodies that are in it in the main book and all the other things that come with it, such as the posters I mentioned just now. So for those of you that are tuning back in, I'm not going to repeat myself too much, so there's one of the posters there. Now, unfortunately, the way this works is I'm going to have to probably hold the book up a bit because Facebook makes you do it this way rather than that way, which is not so easy when the book opens that way, but not to worry. So, to the book. So within the book, you get 3 books, as I mentioned. I'll try and put them to one side. There is the main book, which features on the front there, and you'll probably have seen these on the web, the cancelled Escort C99, the supercar that would have taken on the Ferrari 328, and the Escort Cosworth Speedster. And within this book, all the RS cars are featured. So it's not just about this book, if you like. This book has got, this is the main book. This is the thickest book. So this is nearly 350 pages. And it's the one I'll probably look through first with you, just to show you what's in the main book, because I would stress that there's an awful lot of RS material in this, as well as separately within the RS book. That's one of the 3 that come in the slipcase. Just to mention the slipcase before we move on, I'll pull the posters out of this one. I was just so delighted that when I spoke to the designers, Steve Harper and Dave Hilton, they gave me their sketches for the Focus and for the Escort Cosworth. They're in exactly the same angle. It's incredible that they drew these a decade apart, and they look like they've been specially designed for the cover. So both of them kind of love the fact that they came together to create that cover without ever realizing it was going to look like that. So, picking up the main book here now, the main Secret Forge book, and I'm going to tilt the camera down if I can. Hopefully you can see it there now. So what I'll do is just take you through the book very quickly. Because this is the RS edition, it comes signed and numbered. Each one is signed and numbered by me, which I think is rather cool. And I'll come back to it another day of the sort of main content of the book, if you like, but because I wanted to focus on the RS stuff today. And what you see here, chapter by chapter, the way it works in the book, for those of you that have not got volume 1, maybe have not yet seen volume 2, is I take a vehicle and work its way through the story. But it's a bit like tiles on a roof. Everything slightly overlaps. So you meet the characters and you meet the cars as we go through. And it involves the story of Ford and Ford design. Now, first car we come to after and you saw it quickly there, the GN34 supercar, is the BE13 Fiesta. So that's the first car that has an RS version in it, was obviously the BE13 Fiesta of 1989, which is actually the last car I worked on when I was in Ford back in the day. And so I think it's a really interesting story, the BE13 Fiesta. And the Fiesta Turbo came late in the program. So you can see the design sketches here when the XR2 was done towards the end of the program, because that's the way it worked. They would design the vehicle, and then you get to the XR, and then finally the RS one was added late to it. And so we see the RS being added to the story here. These are all design models. For those of you that know my books and see my books, they'll be familiar with how this works. That these books are basically showing design models, design sketches, prototypes, etc., etc. I thought this was a really interesting, I'll try and move a bit closer to the camera. This was really interesting. So this is what we would call in the trade series differentiation. So these sketches would have been done by the designers to show to market research clinics whether you wanted a turbo, whether you wanted an XR, whether you wanted an S, and what the differences between them would be. That helps the designers and the marketeers, people like me, that work in marketing, to try and differentiate the cars. So that's the Fiesta one. And I know people sort of get very excited about Escort Cosworth and things like that, but my point would be is all the RSs are in there, whether it's RS2000, Escort Fiesta RS or not. So then we come to the main chapter on the the Escort C14. Again, I'll come to this later one day when I cover the non-RS cars, but this covers the story, and you'll see RS2000. That's, you won't be able to see in this resolution, I'm sure, but that's a 5-door on the other side and a 3-door on this side. This is the design models, full-size fiberglass models of the RS2000. So this is the Escort, regular Escort story, which includes the RS2000. And then, of course, we come to the chapter on Escort Cosworth. And I was really keen to cover this story in some detail because I was able to talk to the original designers, which was Steve Harper and Ian Callum. And Ian, I knew from my days when we worked at Jaguar, and Steve Harper was super keen to help, as were the engineers that worked on it, John Bull and John Wheeler. And so I really had a crack team of the sort of key people that had all their photos. And so this is a really amazing story, I think, here. And I'll sort of try and make sure you can see as much of it in the camera there now, of how the car came to be, from the very first rough drawings that John Wheeler made to try and size out the car and sell in the idea. And these papers, again, John kindly scanned for me, and they're the original product papers for the Escort Cosworth. Sometimes they get a bit geeky, these things, but it really helps tell the story of there was some resistance to the car internally. The idea was perhaps at one point not to put the Sierra skin under the car, but to actually make it as a regular RS2000, but put the Sierra Cosworth engine into the existing body shell rather than modify it so extensively. So that story is all told in there. And really it came alive with this car, which there's only been 1 or 2 photos. And I managed to get about 10 out of Ford, some of which are in the main RS book, of the Mark IV, as people tend to call it, the Escort 86 Mule that was made in 1989. And one of the things I picked up from the engineers, John Wheeler and John Bull, was just how this drove like a production car. It was such an easy selling of the program when they made this car that it was, as the Americans say, something of a slam dunk to sell in the concept. But that doesn't make it easy. It's an incredibly tortured story of how it got started. The very first sketches that were done on the car were by Neil Simpson and Julian Quincy. So they're the very, very first sketches that were recorded and that were done on the car before an external consultant, where Steve Harper worked, which is called MGA, that did most of the design of the car. So the car was designed off-site from Ford, predominantly, and we'll come back to that. And these are Steve Harper's sketches, and there's loads in here. And he and I spent a long time, hours and hours and hours, talking about the work he did on the car. And those will be not just in this book, but in the RS book separately. So we then pick our way through the story. I won't go through every page, but this is the very first body shell. It wasn't even a mule, it wasn't even drivable at this stage, put into the wind tunnel. And I think this is rather beautiful. So I'm going to bring that a little closer to the camera. This is Steve Harper's sketches, and a real bit of artistry in there, I think you'd agree, of how he worked with Ford's designers to try and that was a guy called Gert Hohenester, who will come into the story later when you read the book, really wanted to change direction a little bit on the program. And so the car began to evolve, and it was in the wind tunnel with the biplane spoiler that John Wheeler had originally conceived for it. You see that right back in the beginning there, it's the twin wing spoiler, was put into the wind tunnel and tested. The key there was making sure that there wasn't too much downforce at the rear, because obviously that would raise the front. So it was all about varying the lift and the downforce front to rear to stabilize the car. So anyway, moving on from that, because I just want to keep this moving and you get to see everything, we then see the clay model of the car there. You can see it there, maybe a little bit closer there. And this red car is another fiberglass model, mainly fiberglass, bit of metal. It was a body shell that MGA, where Steve Harper worked. During the course of that, Ian Callum, and some of you may know the name, and Ian kindly wrote the foreword for the book, and that's actually Ian there. Ian worked for Ford. Ian was a designer for Ford at the time, and Ian was asked by his bosses to work alongside Steve Harper at MGA Design. And so the design was shifted a little bit into the future, to the design language of the Mondeo. So that's a nice story of the two designers working together, Steve and Ian there, to move the car in a slightly different direction to where it was headed. And obviously it became something of a classic. And this is the final model there that we see, okay? And this particular car was the very first drivable vehicle there. And so, interesting story I was seeing there. Then we go off into Mondeo. So that's the way the pacing of the book works there. And because I'm focusing, if you'll pardon the pun, on the RS stuff, we're going to skip an awful lot of stuff here. We're going through Mondeo and the other cars here. One of the things to notice here is we do a sort of, I would call it, not a recovery chapter, but we go back and revisit Escort. And in here there are features including the rear-wheel drive Escorts, of which there were two. There was one with a V6, one with an RS2000 engine. And again, those of you that know my books will know that I guarantee that 99, if not 98% of all the images in these books have never been seen before, because it's the designer's personal recollection, personal images. So what we see in here is the RS2000, Escort Cosworth rather, Speedster. And two sketches there of the Escort Cosworth Speedster, and I'll bring that closer to the camera there. This was done by Carmen, and I had it redrawn for the cover of the book because my illustrator is rather good, is the Escort Cosworth Coupe that was considered as well. So the story of the Escort Cosworth Speedster, Escort Cosworth Coupe are both in the book there. And we can endlessly debate whether it's a good idea or not, but the fact of the matter is they're there, and we get to understand as a reader what could have happened. And this was another car that's actually really never been seen. This was by Steve Harper again, who did the Escort Cosworth originally at MGA. MGA were contracted to do an Aston Martin version of it, because obviously Ford owned Aston Martin back in the day, and one of the plans that Rob Mansfield, who was then at Aston Martin, asked MGA to look at was a rebodying of the Escort Cosworth as an Aston Martin. So, and then we see more of the rear-wheel drive cars. So that's, I know everybody's fascinated by the story of the Scorpio. We'll come to that another time when I cover the non-RS stuff. But I'll skip forward now because we're coming out of the era of the early 90s, if you like, into what would be the era of the Focus. And so the Focus story has never been told, and it is so interesting. It's probably, along with the Escort, because it was given such a bad reception, how they, by contrast, produced what was, for its period, probably the best car in the world, certainly within the segment, was the Focus. So the Focus story is really, really interesting. I'm really happy with that story. But what I want to concentrate on here is the Focus story as it pertains to the sportier Focuses. So one of the intrigue I found with this was I originally, when I planned this out, and these are big books, and this is nearly 350 pages here, is I had to plan these out in meticulous detail. It's 200 people held to the book, and the more I talked to people, the more complicated the story got of what I thought was just going to be the Escort Cosworth was actually a story of, Focus RS was actually, there was a Focus Cosworth that was hidden, a Focus Racing, and it's really complex. I'm going to try and get through it in a really short space of time, but it's not so easy, to be honest, because it's quite a fascinating story. So way back when, before there was ever the rally car and there was ever the Focus RS program, there was this, which was the Focus Racing that was conceived in the design studio, which is where I was just a few weeks ago, if you followed me and my travels off to Germany. Into the Merconic Design Studio, where I was a guest for a week. And this is behind the scenes, 25 years ago now, back in 97, when they were designing the Focus Racing. It never happened, that car. Another car that never happened was Carmen, who built the Escort convertible, also projected building a Focus convertible as well, Focus Cabrio. Never happened. But it was built as a real vehicle. Sometimes it's always easy to think these are just sort of Photoshop illustrations, but no, there you go. There's a man sitting in it. It was a real car, and then we come to the Focus Cosworth, and I thought I really struggled with this car. I really had to go over to talk to John Coletti, who headed up the special vehicle team, the special vehicle engineering team from the States, to understand what on earth the Focus Cosworth was. And the story is in the book, so I won't spoil it perhaps now, but it's a spin-off from another program, and the engine was designed by Cosworth, and the guys at Cosworth have now moved on or retired, were really helpful, along with John, to explain what the Focus Cosworth was, and indeed why it didn't happen. So all of this is happening before the Focus RS, and even more complicated than that, there was another car in addition to that, and several potential replacements. So these were two Cosworth engine, and remember when I say Cosworth engine, this is a Cosworth version of the Z-Tech engine, not the old Escort Cosworth engine. These were two versions of what would have been the ST replacement and the next generation Focus RS. And so that story is almost an aside to some of the more interesting stuff I think in here, which is this car, which is the Cosworth developed version of the Z-Tech engine that's turbocharged, done by Cosworth with ProDrive. So this was rumoured, it was snapped once or twice in the press. ProDrive were again super helpful, really stepped forward with a lot of material. And this was called Project Irene. And there were two cars made. This is the prototype. Give it sorry for itself. At ProDrive, maybe it's still there today. And this is the Project Osprey was the ST replacement, and Project Irene was the all-wheel drive 300 horsepower Focus next generation RS. And what's interesting is that's all going on at the same time as the car that became the Focus RS was being developed. So what you can see there is a whole mixture of different programs almost competing with each other, which is you've got this sort of monster power car here, which is Project Irene, the 300 horsepower Cosworth ProDrive four-wheel drive car that never happened. And this car, which was a much lower cost car. So this is, I think, really, really interesting because as a story, it's never been told. And this is really a tale of one guy called Neil Briggs and his friend Dave Hilton, who was a designer at Ford, and Pascal Luciani, who worked at Ford, racing Ford Motorsport. And they dreamt up the idea to make a low-cost successor to the Escort Cosworth. The problem with this car is it was an expensive vehicle. This would have been in the, try to put it into today's money for you. I mean, in today's money, probably, if a Focus RS would be £35,000, this would be straying into £55,000, £60,000. So that what they really want to do is keep this car affordable. And so this is the very first mule that was made, and the shell was built at M Sport, Malcolm Wilson's shop, and this is one of the Tickford engineers. So the whole idea was to do it as a turnkey solution, handed over to Tickford. So the car was developed by Tickford with Neil, who followed it through from the beginning to end. And I think it's just a really interesting story that this car long gone got crashed and no longer in existence. But this is the very first mule. And Dave Hilton, who was the designer that left Ford to work freelance on the project, so he really put his life in the air. He believed in the project so passionately, did the design of the car. So again, it was done off-site in the same way that Steve Harper, along with assistance from Ian Callum from the oversight from Ford's perspective, changed that vehicle. This car was solely developed off-site by Dave Hilton. So the whole thing was done, I wouldn't say on a shoestring, but it was done very quick, very fast, in the space of a few months by an external group at Tickford. And so these are his design sketches. You see the clays here, and for those of you that imagine, as I previously always did, it was always in blue. Actually, Dave designed the car in silver because Ford always designs in silver, and he actually loves it in silver. He thinks it's a nice colour for it. And this is one vehicle, one model, one clay model, cabinet with two sides that are different. And one option has stick-on arches here, which are lower cost, and the other, which was the solution that was finally used, which was moulded in arches. So this is the two options that Dave presented back to Ford. This is taken at Dunton at the design studio to try and review which direction to go, and the two wheel options as well. We all know that the final option, more expensive option if you like, was to do these whole new body sides. What Dave wanted to do there, and you'll see it in some of the other pictures, is put air vents in the side, but it was getting too complicated. So lovely story, this, I think, actually, in truth, of how that car was developed. And you can see this is, again, one of the mules here. It's a red wings bolted on. I mean, it's the whole, these cars were really pulled together in a short space of time. It was a really, really fast program. In less than around just over 2 years, they got the car on the road, which is a Herculean effort. And that's that original mule. That car was called Betty Blue as a nickname. That first mule was used all the way through the development program, just like that Escort Cosworth mule, the white one that I showed at the beginning of the book there. So again, this is the first show car being built from an old red diesel, And here they are testing black ones, white ones, blue ones, you name it, all sorts of colours there. And one of the things I wanted to do here, as I did if you have volume 1 with the RS 1700T, I wanted to get to the exact number of cars that were made. I'm not sure people are interested in how many red ones they make with the sunroof, which I do get asked occasionally, but certainly I think more important, top level questions of how many cars were made in total, that answer is in there, and it's because it includes all the prototypes. And then one press shot. When I closed the book after an incredible amount of work, I used one press shot because I thought it was a wonderful, triumphant finish, if you like. And then as a tease for one day, should I ever get around to volume 3, the Fiesta RS in there. So that's the main book. So awful lot of reading in that. But that, of course, is one of the set of 3 that come in the box set that contains the RS book and this scrapbook that comes in the 2-book and the 3-book edition. So what I'll do now is I'll switch to looking at the RS book here now, and this is the RS book. So I think it's rather cool and rather special, and I'll tell you why. So first thing you'll notice is on the back of it there is is that car, and that's the RS 2.0. So let me try and explain what that has been about. For those of you that have seen my posts on Facebook, you'll know that I came up with a rather radical idea with Amco Leonards, who's Ford's current design director, to reimagine the RS 200. So we thought it was a very daring, very brave thing to do, but we thought it was a very exciting thing to do, is to set the designers the challenge of reimagining the RS 200. As soon as we came to an agreement in doing that, and that's a big, big gesture on Ford Motor Company's part to reimagine the RS 200 for the future, to rekindle some ideas and thinking behind that car was a huge achievement, and I couldn't thank them enough for their commitment to the book. So then I realised that I get pushed and pushed and pushed to do RS material. This is it. This book is the RS book. So what I'll do is I'll take you through it now, top line, because I really don't want to keep us looking at these things page in, page out. I'd rather you read the book, to be honest with you. I set the scene for the intro here, and the reason I wanted to set the scene was the level of talent that is designed different RS cars is immense. So I'll come to it in a moment. So this sets the scene for those of you that are fans of the RS cars, is just how exciting it was. That some of the most stellar names in design have actually gone out and created these cars. It kicks off with this, which I did a small feature for the RS Owners Club probably 2 years ago now. Everybody seemed to love it, which was the history of the logos and history of the wheels. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to reinvent that with the cover and the poster for the wheels and story of the wheels. And here is the story of the logos, because we all love a logo, basically. So this talks through the history of the different RS logos. And this doesn't look particularly exciting, but it actually, I think, is fascinating reading. So this is the story from, it mirrors up with Volume 1. I should come back to Volume 1 at some point, because that's also got a lot of RS material in it. And I maybe have undersold how much RS material is in Volume 1 of the book, which is the same amount, frankly, as there is in Volume 2. So this updates, if you like, and includes a list of all the designers of the earlier cars. So right back from the 70s through to Sierra Cosworth. And so just randomly picking some of the names that we see there. The Capri RS 3100 was designed by Jack Telnack, who went on to head Ford Global Design for, I think it was 12 years. Tom Scott, fantastic pictures in Volume 1 of how the RS 2000 was designed. Tom Scott was Jeep's chief designer, and then was a very senior designer overseeing advanced design at Ford. Thomas Plath, who did the RS 1700T, head up advanced design at BMW later in his career. Ian Callum worked on the RS 200. He obviously comes back into the story with the Escort Cosworth and his later work at Aston and Jaguar. Sierra Cosworth, Humler guy, chief designer at Porsche. So these are stellar names, and this is your chance, if you like, as enthusiasts, to meet these people and find out and hear their stories. So I went back to each of them, got some more images, got some more sketches, more stuff that's never been seen for the earlier cars, for those of you that are into, and just some of the artwork. I mean, it's just beautiful. This is why I thought to do the posters. And this is Humler Guy's original sketches for the Sierra Cosworth. He went up into his loft and tugged them out, bless him. You know, imagine what it's like. This is the former chief designer of Porsche going back 35 years in his career. So much excitement to share this stuff. RS200, more and more RS200 material I keep getting, so I put that in. And again, it dovetails nicely into the RS 2.0 that we'll come to later. Then I pick up on the later generation of designers. I mentioned Ian and Steve and their work on Escort Cosworth enough. Another Steve Sykes, did the Fiesta RS, and then the three generations of designers that did the three versions of the Focus. This one by Ernesto Rupar. I'll maybe come back to it. I had the pleasure of meeting Ernesto because he's done one of the RS 2.0 designs. So Ernesto is, if you like, the RS designer. He did the Focus RS Mark III, and he's also done some of the RS 2.0 work that's in the back of this book. And lovely guy, and we're doing some video later on that. Sierra Cosworth has never been seen, a three-door 92 model, different version of the RS 2000. It's always a bit forgotten child, the RS 2000, the Fiesta RS and RS 1800 and RS 2. So I wanted to cover them. I wanted to, you know, I had all this material. I wanted to make sure everything got a look in. Then we come to something I think is unusual. I got Steve Harper and Dave Hilton, the designer of Escort Cosworth and Focus RS, to tell their story firsthand. So in the main book, you hear the big picture story. These are the designers writing for you in their own words, firsthand, their work on, in this case, Escort Cosworth. And you see more of Steve's sketches here now. And more images I got kindly from John Bull at SVE here of the mules. So you get a really robust first-hand story in the scrapbook for what would be the backstory, if you like, beyond even the inside story that I tell in the main book here. More of the rear-wheel drive cars, and then you see this is Dave Hilton actually sticking the RS badge onto the Focus RS. So again, Dave Hilton does that story here, and it's a rather marvellous story. Dave is a rather nice writer as well as Steve Harper. And then Mike Dickinson from Tickford tells the engineering story. So that's cool enough, I think, to hear from these guys first of all. And this is probably one of the more exciting things I think people are not expecting is this story was written by Damien Harty, who was the, I think it was the title of Vehicle Attribute Engine Manager or something, test driver developer on the Project Irene, the four-wheel drive, ProDrive, and Damien worked for ProDrive. And this is his story of what it was like to drive the prototype. So this is something you never get to read, is what was it like to drive this prototype firsthand. Now you get to see it. So you get to see underside of the car. So this is why I think the RS book is so exciting. You really get a second level beyond even the excitement that's in the main book. Then we change direction, which is rather cool. So then you hear, nothing of this book is written by me firsthand. This is all from individuals that contribute, which makes it rather cool, I think, is, apart from the logo stuff at the beginning and about the designers' introductions, is you meet these images from each of the designers. And this is an introduction by Amco Leonards, Ford's current director of design here. And I love this, that somebody decided it would be a fantastic idea, Robert Engelman, to actually redesign the interior of RS200. And what I did was I made sure Ian Callum, because he'd worked on the original car, looked over this. Ian was over the moon with the work that these guys have done, because it's not an easy car to revisit. And so what you see here, this is Ernesto Rupar, who I mentioned earlier, and what you see here are the designer's sort of reimagination of the Focus RS. So that's, and then I finished there with, it's just a rather nice close from Richard Parry Jones, who I'm sure many of you will know the name there. Richard Parry Jones was the engineer that chose to really bring Ford back into the RS scene. This is his, and he died, unfortunately, so sadly, 2 weeks after he wrote the intro for me. And this is his passionate plea for RS, and it's a rather lovely and elegant way, I think, of closing the book. So that's the RS book that sits along the main book here. And as I say, for those of you that buy, as many of you have, the 3-book set, those are the 3 books. I'll come to the non-RS cars a little bit, and I must stress that's kind of exciting too, if you like, of the RS cars there as well. So that's, I'll pull the camera up so you can see me again here. Hopefully my laptop will open. I can see any questions you've got here now. And I hope that's been useful for you to see the inside stories, if you like, of the cars here. What I'll do now is I'm going to try and scroll through if my computer will let me. Thank you for your good wishes and Happy New Year. Happy New Year back, and see a lot of those there. Let me see if... this is always one of the problems with trying to switch between a laptop and I can't see the questions beyond the last four. It's somewhat annoying there. If anybody's got questions, feel free to answer them. I'll certainly do my best to. And if these question and answer sessions are useful and I can do them with people just typing in, etc., 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 then I'll happily do that as well. Let me see if I can just scroll through on the screen here now. I can see everybody's watching, which is terrific. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll go back and look through these questions a little later, I think, and I'll do a Q&A session online if that's what you'd like to do. But hopefully that's been interesting. I wanted to keep this fairly short because otherwise it's getting late, and at the end of the day, I don't want to take up too much of people's time here. But hopefully that's been interesting. I'll do another session if you guys would like it, either as a Q&A or talk through the rest of the book there, or go into more detail if you like on the cars there. But I thought it was just a nice chance for you to get to see the book firsthand. Obviously, my great hope, having spent so much of my life writing these books for you, is you buy them and read them. It's not about money, it's about sharing a passion for something that we love. And I think this is such a unique book. I mean, I can't begin to tell you how much it means to so many people that contributed to it. So these stories will never be told again. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in tonight. If you like that, just drop me a line, tell me, and I'll do one again if you wish. But for now, let me wish you all a happy new year. For those of you that have got the book, happy reading. For those of you that will hopefully now look at buying it, I wish you too happy reading. It's been a long journey. I think we're nearly at the end of it now with the Secret Force project, but there's so much to share within it. I'll make sure that I keep sharing it in the months to come. But thank you all for your excitement. I get emails every day. I love it. It's great to hear from everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great new year.